Hi, welcome back to the Three Orcs channel. This is David. Today I want to do an update on the map for the Viscount of Verbobonc for the Temple of Elemental Evil campaign. My campaign has been the Sandbox version of the Temple of Elemental Evil, which includes the Gnarly Forest, Cron Hills, Greenwave Valley, Lort Mill Mountain, Selene, the Fairy Kingdom of Selene, and the Viscounty of Verbobonc, parts of Thirandi and Valuna, and also parts of the Wild Coast. Now, when I talk about the epic version, Sandbox version of the Temple of Elemental Evil, the module itself by Gary Gygax, he stated specifically, I keep saying this in every video, that he expects the Dungeon Masters to flush out the area, to broaden the scope of the adventure, and bring the world to life. And that the 4 locations that he keyed in Nulb was only some of the locations in Nulb that need to be keyed, and he expected the Dungeon Master to fill the rest of those out. Over the years, a lot of us have done that. Many DMs have created some great, wonderful work, some articles actually flushing out the area, much like the Village of Hamlet has. Village of Hamlet has over 40 locations with NPCs, backgrounds, politics, treasure, and motivations, and also local side quests. Traditionally, when Dungeon Masters ran the campaign, they had their players start outside of Hamlet, arrive at the town, and stay at the inn, get rumors, get some quests pointing their way towards the moat house. Then after they cleared the moat house and confronted Lareth, took him out or brought him in as prisoner to Burnham Rufus, they found out that a lot of this activity was coming from Nulb, and that the Temple of Elemental Evil was put down 7 years ago, and none of the leadership in the Viscounty area knows that the Temple of Elemental Evil is on the rise again. That they're all satisfied it was put down 7 years ago after the Battle of Emerald Meadows, and they sealed the temple. So they have no expectation that there's any kind of rise of activity from that area, except for a few investigators. They've sent NPCs to Nulb to spy on activities there to find out if there is a rise or any kind of activity. And that would be like Otis, Kenneth Yade of St. Cuthbert, non-player characters like that. When players start this campaign, their characters would not expect any activity there. The players themselves might not, because they've seen the cover of the module and they've heard stories for decades about this adventure and what to expect. Their expectation as players is they're going to do a dungeon slog in the Temple of Elemental Evil. But their characters would not know this. So the Dungeon Master has to provide detail and rumors and proof that there's activity in the area and it's coming from Nulb area. So that leads us to my project, which is the Verbobonc Campaign Guide 576 Common Year. That's the website. It's public facing, so anybody can use it in their campaign. And all the articles are written in a bullet point type format, much like Old School Essentials is. So it's really quickly referenceable to be used at the table while you're role-playing with your players. I'm going to repeat this in every video. I always repeat this, that I always recommend in every video that Dungeon Masters should find the source material and read it. It's great wealth of material, but it's really difficult to use at the table, especially if it's scattered all over the internet or in different books. So that's where my website comes in. It's like Dungeon Master notes for the campaign with a lot of artwork and extra things like menus and stat blocks and things like that. And so you can use that at the table, and it's all hyperlinked. That way you can actually find information quickly, easily. Also, there's interactive maps, and that's what leads us to today's video. So the map for the Eastern Viscounty of Verbobonc and the other map for the entire Viscounty of Verbobonc has hyperlinks for every town that I've completed so far. And if you click on that link, you're going to take you to that article, and then you'll see all the locations in that shop. Then I'll take you to a master article that has links to all the other shops and locations in that village, and also NPCs and quests and lore and organizations and things like that. D&D had a huge impact on my life. I started playing in grade school after Star Wars came out in 1977, where I started a gaming club that led to D&D. At the time, I would be found in a classroom, keeping my head low, buried in a fantasy book. The D&D Blue Box set changed and consumed my life. Quickly after that, I bought the AD&D Player's Handbook by Gary Gygax, which had a massive influence on me. I highly recommend these books to read. Rise of the Dungeon Master, Gary Gygax and the Creation of D&D by David Kushner and Corinne Sadme. This graphic novel is a quick read, and it is a brief glimpse into the life of Gary Gygax, the creation of D&D, the controversy, and the effects that the game had on pulp culture and many lives that it touched. The next book is Empire of Imagination, Gary Gygax and the Birth of Dungeons & Dragons by Michael Whitwer. I found that this biography is a series of fictional vignettes about events in Gary Gygax's life. loosely connected by nods at context, which is more of a inspired by true events story than an actual biography. And the last one is Of Dice and Men, the story of Dungeons & Dragons and the people who play it by David Ewalt. This was a fun read about the history of Dungeons & Dragons. The author injects that some scenes from one of his own D&D campaign, which I liked, but sometimes it strayed a little bit too far from the subject and covered a lot other role-playing games. I was really happy to identify with a lot of the scenes in this book, and not just from playing the game. You can find my affiliate links down below. Well, so going through all this over the years, I noticed we had one problem. The source of my inspiration for keying this entire area to make it more of a sandbox, so no matter where the players go, it's fully keyed, ready to be used, just like the Village of Hamlet, is Living Greyhawk. Now, I realized that Living Greyhawk was written for the campaign year 594 Common Year. But those locations still exist, and we can still use them in the campaign, no matter what timeline you use. So all those villages are still there. And we have Nob, and you have Sheernob and Ostverk down south, which brings me to the subject of those modules. I've actually written them as PDF releases on DM's Guild, so you can get the module for Sheernob and for Ostverk. Also, another module for side quests for the Village of Hamlet. That way it'll give your players a lot more to do in the campaign before going to the Temple of Elemental Evil. So back to the subject of the villages that are keyed in the area. Right in the middle of Viscounty of Verbobonc is this town called Cienega Valley. Now let me bring up the map and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Okay, the big screen. This is the splash screen for my website, available for anybody to use in their campaign for the Verbobonc Campaign Guide 576 Common Year that you can use to run any adventure in the area, including the Temple of Elemental Evil. The splash screen describes generally what the campaign's all about, and it's inspired by Living Greyhawk to flush out and fill in, key the area for any timeline that you run your campaign in. Also, this is public use for free because I follow the Wizards of the Coast fan content policy. If you scroll down to the interactive map, it's embedded in the main page, is the Viscounty of Verbobonc. It's limited view because it's on this particular web page, which is the front page. But let's go ahead and take a look at the map in its entirety. This is the map for the Viscounty of Verbobonc. The orange line circling the lands is the border between the Viscounty of Verbobonc and different countries. To the north is Throndy, and to the west is Valuna. All the way to the east, northeast, is Divers. As you can see, the Gnarly Forest is divided up too, because Viscounty owns the western half of the Gnarly Forest, Divers owns the northern half, and the Wild Coast is on the eastern half. If you look at the map and zoom in more, you'll see that all these towns have been keyed in. A lot of these towns, if you put your cursor over it, will have a little pop-up mini description of what that town's all about, so you don't have to click on it. But if you do click on it, it'll bring up a side article. And I'm going to show you Nib's Rest. So Nib's Rest is on the way to Hamlet. In my campaign, I start my players at the city of Verbobonc because they're all first level, and I wanted to get them to second level before they get to the Moat House. Larth always kicks everybody's butt. So I had them do another quest first from Living Greyhawk called Nobles and Ambitions, which I'll rewrite later and release for your campaign. One of the local nobles, Lady Osbury, hires the players to go after her jewels of Osbury that was lost during the Battle of Emerald Meadows. And she'll send them east into the Fens of Tor for the first dungeon that I'll publish. The map's already on my Patreon, and it's a VTT map you can use in any VTT program. After that, they head south again, following up on rumors about bandits and Blackthorn orcs. Blackthorn orcs are at that ancient Sul temple in the first module. They get some maps from them and find out all the warband plans for the future, which is interesting. The players end up going south. As they go south, you go through each of these towns. Penwick is fully keyed, and then Etterbourg is keyed. A lot of times they'll stay at these places for the night and rest, get rumors, recruit, repairs, whatever. They continue southwards until they finally get to Nib's Rest. Now, Nib's Rest is 10 miles northwest of the village of Hamlet, and that's the last stop before they're going to get hit by raiders, by bandits. Usually in a campaign, they get hit by bandits at the very start before they get to Hamlet. So they take one last rest at Nib's Rest. That town used to be called Cienega Valley. This is the thing about canon. I try to stick to canon as much as possible, as close as I can, and still fit this campaign world. I try to write it in a way where it can be used in any timeline. I know sometimes it's not possible, but I do try. The Dungeon Master can still use this material. Cienega Valley, first off, that's a Dungeon Master that was writing for Living Greyhawk series in the 2000 for convention tournament for the organized session play. A dungeon master wrote a few modules that created this town with Fort Emerdiat along Nib's Run, and he called it Cienega Valley, and nobody really questioned it. And basically, I guess he's from California, and that's the name of a vineyard town in California. That always rubbed me wrong. I do not like that name. It just doesn't fit in the world of Greyhawk. Being the kind of guy I am, I like to try to follow canon. Well, Living Greyhawk really isn't canon. It's kind of canon. To cement it even more about canon, Anna Myers took all these locations throughout the Living Greyhawk years, all these extended locations that they built into the main map, and she put them on her map. So on her map, this location is called Cienega Valley. And so that kind of cemented it. You know, who am I to change that now? After 5 years of working around this campaign and creating all these villages and keying it all in, I find that not many other people are really doing this kind of work. I'm the only one doing it. And the followers are building up. There are a lot of dungeon masters out there running this now and using this material. I finally got to the point, exasperated by the whole thing last week, and I decided, you know what? I got to do something about that. So I was checking out Greyhawk Reborn, which is really cool. Reinvention of the world of Greyhawk. They have a different lore, but they still have some good ideas in their pages. They have a map, and I'll show the map to you on the screen here. They renamed it Nib's Rest. You see that river running parallel to the Long Road? The Long Road is the main merchant road that connects the kingdom from north to south, from the city of Verbobonc all the way down to Selene. And it runs parallel to Nib's Run. They named it in his campaign box set Nib's Rest. I thought, that's a pretty good name. I like that. It sounds, reasonable. It sounds fitting. It has the right vibe to it. Another product by RVN Creations, I believe they're called, came out with a map, and they call it Nib's Rest there too, which is for the reimaging of Hamlet. And that was one of the things I liked about his product, is that name. So I finally came to the point where, well, that I like that. I was sold on it, but I still didn't want to make the changes because it's so much. It's a different name that it's on Anna Meyer's map, which is kind of a thing, I don't want to, make people. I don't want to turn people away because I know how critical things like that can be with old school experts of Greyhawk. So I reached out to some people on Canon Fire and book groups like Greyhawk Sages. I came across a few people that wrote for Dragon Magazine, different designs and modules, and actually ran Living Greyhawk. Then I talked to the Living Greyhawk Triad for the Verbobonc area. I asked them, what do you think of this? Finally, I said, I'd like to change the name. You guys have any idea of, is there anything I need to know before I do this? Any opinion? And they were all on the opinion that I'm in the position to change that name, and they liked the idea. They like that name. And they said, this is not a problem. Go ahead and change it, and we'll support you. We like it. I said, okay, that encouraged me to do it, so I did it. But here we go on this map. If you put your cursor over it, it describes what the town looks like. And you click it one more time, it brings up a side article on the left. This is a limited view article. Usually I start off at the beginning of the article with flavor text. When players get to town or the location for the first time, you can read them. This flavor text is useful for a campaign for a dungeon master. You take it or leave it, depending on your experience as a dungeon master. And then below that is descriptions in history and geography and the society and culture, all the important stuff, politics, anything you need to know about that town. So it's all here. But the whole article isn't here. So to read the full article, you have to click on Read Full Article at the bottom, and then it pops up the full article. It looks cool, and I got the banner to match it. And on the right side is an interactive map. On the bottom right hand of that, there's an icon to click on for open full size. You can bring that map of Nib's Rest full size on the screen, but I'm not going to do that right now. This map, there's Nib's Run. I didn't change the name of Cienega Valley. It's probably in the corner. The numbered locations are links. I keyed a lot of these shops, important locations in the town, so you can role play it. Also, there's a lot of empty buildings too that I didn't key for the dungeon master, for other dungeon masters to key themselves to customize their campaign. Sometimes players will buy a building, or you might want to add a shop that you need in your campaign. So a lot of these buildings are left unkeyed for the dungeon master. If we scroll down, I always list on the right hand side, which doesn't pop up in the mini article, but only the full article, you'll see the sidebar. Notable figures, characters, organizations, also a keyed area on the right is a list of all the keyed locations in town that you can click on and just go to that article, versus using the interactive map. So it's two ways to get to a location. in any articles. Either you use the interactive map or you click on one of these links in the sidebar. I always put a lot of more artwork in the sidebar too, and some dialogue sometimes, and prices and items, things like that. There's always some special stuff in the sidebar that you don't see in a mini article. And going back to the main article, at the bottom is a list of all the maps that I've made for this entire campaign. You have Asbury, Cienega Valley, which I need to rename, Verbobonc, Village of Hamlet, fully keyed on the website with side quests, Ostfirk, Penwick, Sheer Knob, City of Verbobonc, Viscounty of Verbobonc is what we just saw, the eastern region. We'll go ahead and click on the eastern region of the Viscounty. This is a different art style. As you can see, the City of Verbobonc is in the top left-hand corner. Now, each hex on this map is 1 mile. So it's much more detailed than any other version of the map you'll see out there. Because I always start my players at the City of Verbobonc, and there's a lot of action in that first module, Noble Ambitions. Very critical. It sends the players east, past Penwick, past Asbury Manor, past Anshan, which is a town I created for this campaign, the swamp border town. They do a lot of trade in rare exotic herbs from the swamp. And then they have to cross the swamp. They have to cross Emeriti Run into the edge of the gnarly forest where an ancient Sul temple is. With all these encounters in this entire adventure, you have to have more detail. And so that's why I keyed it this way for this particular map. So I even have Emeriti Meadows keyed. So everything you need to know. So real quick about Emeriti Meadows while I'm talking about it. Basically, anywhere between Asbury Manor and east of Penwick and all the way up to the Velverdiver River is the Emeriti Meadows. Now, Asbury Manor and that area southwest is based on Asbury Meadows. If you click on the article, you'll read the history there and see what I'm talking about. We got these minor little things that were not in any map that I created. I just used my creativity. I realized that since we're going into so much detail in this campaign, that'd be good to name the roads, which would be fully realistic in any campaign, especially a main merchant road would have a name. So we have all these roads named here. In Anna Meyer's map, she had a tiny lake here on her map. I recreated it on my map, and I gave it a name. And I even put a little tiny village on the north end of that map by the mouth of the river. It's not really a village. It's more like a fishing thorp. It's not keyed on any map. I could always key that later, or any Dungeon Master can key it for your campaign if you feel like you need it. It's kind of cool. And these little mountain ranges to the south here, I haven't named them yet. If you have any good ideas for names, I'm all ears. Even that stream. But if you go north, all the way down to Nib's Rest, there's the Edders. The Edders need a description. I got a couple of DMs working on it. If you have anything about the Edders, let me know. Send it to me. I'd love to use it. I can rewrite it and make it look good. So right here, Nib's Rest. I renamed it from Cienega Valley. All the area around it are farmlands, which is kind of cool. And there's Cron Hills. And the map isn't big enough to go all the way down the village of Hamlet. The reason I made this map to begin with is because it was dealing with the first quest, Noble Ambitions, which takes them to the Defense of Tor. And then finally, the players move south. And then we go to the other map for that. But this map was big enough, and I want to make sure the scale is 1 hex per mile. I needed that detail for all those encounters. Now later, when I published that new module for the first level characters in this campaign, this little icon in the top right hand corner is a layers one, and I can do a DM only layer. So it'll show only those locations to the Dungeon Master for the campaign for that module, including the Ancient Sul Temple. Just tell your players not to click on that. Speaking of clicking, a lot of my articles have spoilers in them, and they're collapsed, so players can't read them. They can easily click on the spoiler and read the DM-only section. Just tell your players not to do that. They're going to spoil it and ruin it for everybody if they do read it. It's a public website, and it needs to be used by quite a few people, and this is the best way to do that. So spoilers is the only way I could really think of a way around that. You just have to trust your player. All right, so what do you think? Nib's Rest. Do you like it? Do you appreciate that it's changed for the campaign to give it more flavor, the better vibe to it? What do you think? Post down below your thoughts about the change to what Anna Myers had listed, which is really based on just one of the Living Greyhawk modules. If you'd like to support me, please come to my Patreon channel, 3 Orcs Patreon. I offer not only articles daily, but I also provide these maps in high resolution detail so you can print them up at the table. The regular standard JPEGs that I produce is only best used for online, but I also create PNG higher resolution versions too, so it can be printable. Because I know a lot of DMs like to run it at the table and print stuff up. And so I offer that on the Patreon as well. If you just want to support the project and get on there with me, that's fine. You can join and not pay anything and get a lot of that stuff for free. But there are some articles that you have to be a member to get.
Did you enjoy video? Consider tossing support on my Patreon. It's best way to support orcs. If you would like to see more content, subscribe and post comments below. It better not be bad.
Thank you for listening to me for the chains of the town Cienega Valley to Nib's Rest. I hope your players in your campaign had as much fun as mine have.